Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we meet again on the air in the program Man and Nature, produced by Patricia Afrina. I'm your host, Shaikh Saifuddeen bin Shaikh Salleh, and today we have another interesting topic lined up for discussion in Man and Nature. And our topic this week is Birds of a Feather, exploring avian diversity. As usual, I'm not alone in the studio, and for this week we have actually invited an expert on ornithology to share his views and expertise on the topic that we have chosen for discussion this week. Alhamdulillah, accompanying me today is our special guest, Professor Dr. Rosli bin Ramli, who is Professor at the Institute of Biological Sciences, Faculty of Science, Universiti Malaya. Assalamualaikum and welcome to Man and Nature, Prof. Rosli.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Shaikh, for having me for this program.
Thank you for accepting our invitation to be on Man and Nature. So, Prof, can we start our discussion?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, Prof. Rosli, we actually have known each other for quite some time. We go back way to the 1990s.
Yeah, when we're still young. Yeah.
When we were still young, when both of us were at the University of Glasgow.
Yes.
I was doing my undergraduate studies, and you were doing your PhD.
Yeah.
And your PhD was in the field of ornithology.
Yes, that's right.
So I think perhaps our listeners would like to know, since ornithology is the scientific study of birds, what led you to study birds in the first place?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shaikh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So it's rather than opportunity than pure interest. I was kampung boy, raised up in the kampung area, so quite get used with wildlife surrounding my home. But that is not really sparked the interest of studying bird or wildlife. But what really not really forced me, but really induced me to in this field actually is after I complete my first degree in 1992. I was offered as a research assistant, and then after that we have one international lecturer who teach bird and mammal at that time, Dr. David Well. He basically is on a contract basis, so the department desperately need people to take over the post. So they persuade me to pursue my study in ornithology. So at that time, I still remember Prof. Dr. Abdul Halif Sulaiman as a head of department. So they pursued me to apply for scholarship. For this is basically what we call scheme like time academic. We try to send boy putra abroad, getting the PhD and coming back serve the university. So that is when basically my career start and in studying bird, because the scholarship is not only for doing PhD but must be in that particular field. So I have to pursue my PhD study in ornithology, coming back in Universiti Malaya, search Universiti Malaya, and then teach in that field. So that's basically all it started. That was 32 years back. So now basically it's just quite a long time to go.
So that's how it all started. But I was also wondering, why Glasgow?
Oh yeah. I got few options actually, either Glasgow or I forgot, it's somewhere in Liverpool or something. I forgot already. But in the Glasgow they offer better field of study. So at that time, initially I would like to study molecular on bird, because 30 years back molecular field basically is start emerging, so become very interesting topic. Now this basically is just too common rather than ecology. And then another thing is my health department at that time, and then my mentor Prof. Noiso, Prof. Azrai asked me that you better do more on the technical part, because the ecology you can grab later. So that's what forced me to do in Glasgow University. Yeah.
Okay. So, Prof, our topic is birds of a feather, exploring avian diversity. So, what factors influence avian diversity in a given ecosystem?
Yeah, there actually is many factors that influence bird in selecting their habitat in any ecosystem. So which means that if any ecosystem have a lot of habitat diversity, they have many type of habitat, that will attract more bird to occupy the habitat. So the ecosystem will have more bird species compared to other ecosystems that have less habitat diversity. In addition to that, we can relate that this habitat diversity with availability of food resources, because when you have more diverse habitat, so the chances of habitat to provide more food for its inhabitant, including bird, will be higher. So we can have that many bird species in different type of habitat because they are specialized in certain type of habitat. It's not only food. Availability of water also play important role because some bird they need water. Well, it's not only for survival but also for nesting and for their normal behavior, daily behavior. And then in addition to that, the interaction between bird and their environment also play important role. Any wildlife, including bird, when they would like to select habitat, they will see that whether that habitat have competitor or predator. So these two important factors that influence any bird or other wildlife species to occupy the habitat. So if they have, there is a lot of predators present. So that basically they have to consider what is the cost or benefit of utilizing that habitat. The habitat provide better food resources, but can that compensate with a high degree of predation, for example? Same thing goes to competition. If they have competitor in that habitat, so do the competition is lesser compared to reward they can get the ability of food resources. And then in addition to this type of habitat, diversity of habitat, presence of water, interaction, we also have other factor that either directly or indirectly influence how bird or other animal choose their habitat. This include the climate. The climate, some bird prefer some type of climate in order for them to occupy that habitat. So the climate is suitable for them, so they will occupy the habitat. In Malaysia, maybe this is not so obvious because we basically were enjoying better climate throughout the year. But if we go to temperate country, you can see that some of the year basically the climate is not so favorable for their survival. And then in addition to that, the location of habitat also quite important. Some of the habitat basically located along the migration route of the bird. So there are many species of bird that migrate when their original habitat experience winter season, very cold. So they have to migrate, they move out from that area. And then they will migrate to, for example, bird from northern hemisphere will migrate to southern hemisphere, or to Malaysia and this tropical region. So if the area located along the migration route, you can see that in some month, for example, the migration time is from September, end of September until early May or late April. So during that time, you can see increase of bird species. So they can maybe just stop over at Malaysia or some area, or they maybe use Malaysia as their best destination route during winter season. And then there are also like the human impact. Some of the habitat basically have a high degree of human activities. So some bird basically they are not really comfortable with this kind of human activity, so they may shy away from that habitat. So habitat that basically area that have less human activity normally will attract more bird to that area. So there's a few things that we can consider for bird selecting the habitat. We can go for details. There are more ideas, but I think that's generally that's a few things, a few factors that we can consider in terms of how bird choosing or selecting the habitat to survive. Yeah.
Okay, I think you have outlined the general factors.
Yeah.
I think that's something that our audience really appreciate. But Prof, how do different bird species contribute to ecosystem functioning and resilience?
There are many functions provided by bird species. Not only bird species, because when we talk about ecosystem, we have to understand that this is not a single factor. It's not contributing with only one group of animal or other group of plant and so on. The ecosystem means that we need to see the interaction among all the inhabitants within that ecosystem. So we have biotic factor, we have abiotic factor, we have living and non-living factor. So we have many factors that involve. Among living, we have bird and we have other animal as well. But because our discussion today on birds, we focus on bird. So there are few things contribute by bird. The most important thing, like for example, in pollination. So some bird, like nectarvorous bird, there is bird that feed on nectar. So this is like sunbird, flower pecker, or in Bahasa we call it burung kelicap. So this bird basically visit one plant, they will sip the nectar from that plant, and then they will visit other plant. This bird actually, without realizing that when they sip nectar from one plant, they also carry with them the pollen of that tree, and then they will bring to other tree. So indirectly, they will pollinate other trees by doing basically they're serving as pollinator without realizing that they are actually just try to get the food sources, but at the same time they carry out other function to pollinating. Some plant rely on this for to allow their individual to be pollinated by others. And other group of plant like frugivorous bird, this is like hornbill, barbet. So this bird basically they feed on the fruit, the flesh part of the fruit, but the hard part, the seed, basically still keep intact inside bird digestive system. So what happens is for this kind of bird, when they feed on fruit, they consume the flesh part, the soft part, and then the hard part, the seed, basically grow through their digestive system, and when they defecate, they will indirectly distribute or disperse the seed to other place of the forest. So other part of the area or the habitat. So this seed dispersal function played by bird also quite important for plant up to certain level whereby plant will evolve to produce fruit that attract the bird, because depending on how plant use dispersal agent, because we know that some plant they use air to disperse the seed or wind, some they use a bird, some they use mammal. So if they choose bird, they have to produce very colorful fruit to attract the bird. And if they choose other animal, they may have different mechanism. So this basically the bird and the plant already co-evolve in order for them for bird to basically enjoy benefit as their food sources by feed on fruit, but at the same time the plant also enjoy benefit by using, or we can call it using bird to disperse their seed. So that is two positive aspect of plant contribution to ecosystem. But we cannot deny that plant also some of the species can behave as a pest as well. Some sparrow, some munia, basically they are carnivorous. They feed on seed, grain. So basically, like for example, during my young days, during my boy time, so I was living not far away from paddy field. So you can see that there is a lot of tree sparrow or munia or chia. That's basically visit from one plot of paddy field to another plot of paddy field. So basically, this become pests because when they come in big number, basically they will damage the tree. The same thing also goes to other species as well. There are many species of bird that behave as a pest when they come in big number, and when they consume plant material, they basically become pests. But the bird also can be used as indicator species. Some species of bird basically only present in good habitat. So it means that when the habitat have a good quality, so you can see that bird. So you can use that bird basically to study it or to indicate whether this is a good habitat or not. I think Dr. Hidayah already discussed about this in last week. But when use a dragonfly as a indicator for habitat quality, so some bird also can be used in that aspect. The only difference is if you use dragonfly, they are used basically at the lower level of food change, whereas in bird they are at higher level, which means that they are at the top level. So they are more affected by any changes in the environment, and then their contribution also will slightly different in terms of their function. And we also cannot run away from in terms of cultural and ecotourism value. So there are some birds being used in cultural aspect or in ecotourism. So we will look, maybe if we have time, we'll discuss about that in next few minutes about how bird being used for ecotourism. So, but their presence in particular area can attract tourists to visit the area just to watch them. They're enjoying watching this bird. So that is among a few other contribution playing by bird in ecosystem functioning and resilient. We have other, if we go detail, like for example, nutrient cycling and carbon sequestration. So these all indirect effect provided by bird species for ecosystem services. But I think if we go into detail, maybe we don't have time to discuss the other thing. Yeah.
Okay, Prof, what about the threats to avian diversity, either natural or anthropogenic?
In natural, maybe we don't have so many. Basically, we can classify natural threat into two aspects. One is a climate change. So this is a quite main issue. I think you talk any wildlife, any animal, any plant, any environment. So you cannot run away from climate change. Second one is natural disaster. Both of these aspects basically will cause the destruction of nesting site, destruction of habitat. Will basically change the habitat, become not too suitable to be lived anymore. So that is a natural threat. But in terms of anthropogenic threat, we have so many things. One is in terms of habitat loss and degradation. So this is basically no need for the explanation. We know that when we develop certain area, we convert forests into residential area, for example, or we convert forests to agricultural area. So basically, we'll destruct the habitat, or we degrade the habitat to listing. But normally we destruct the habitat. So this basically will cause habitat loss, and the bird cannot survive in that area anymore. So we're talking about the forest birds. So they need forest in order for them to survive. When you convert forest into agriculture area, it doesn't mean that all bird will be destroyed from the area, but you won't be able to see forest bird anymore. You will still other type of bird, that common bird that can survive in plantation area. So basically, when we deforest our forest, so this forestation basically will eliminate the habitat that can be used by bird. And then we also have some sort like invasive species. When we introduce species, we bring species from outside and introduce. So this is basically either directly or indirectly. Directly mean that we bring in the species basically for domestication purpose. Maybe we like to rear this bird as pet. And then after certain years, we don't like to have this bird anymore, so we just release it to the environment. So this bird sometimes they become escapee, sometimes they become a release bird, and if they manage to survive, they may be able to increase their population because they do not have the original predator that can control their habitat, their population. So this is quite dangerous. We have few species, for example, crow is the popular example, but this happened basically maybe 40, 50 years ago already. The crow basically is not a native species. It's being brought in by the ship. Some say that it's from India, but they are proven that they are very successful now, up to the station whereby even the local bird cannot compete with them anymore. So basically, they can be found almost anywhere. Even you go to Taman Negara, deep inside the forest, you can see the crow as well. And then another species that being brought in or accidentally be brought in is Javan myna. So they compete with the common myna. Common myna is the brown one. Used to be, they are quite common in throughout Peninsular Malaysia. The Javan myna basically is from Java Island. They start encroach in Singapore, and then they go to Johor Bahru, and then now they can be even seen in Kedah, in Perlis. So they displace the population of common myna. Common myna become less common compared to Javan myna. And then we also have some, hopefully not so serious now, some sort of like illegal wildlife trade. We have people that poaching the bird, selling them. From time to time, we can see that the wildlife department catch some people that still practice in this area. There are some species affected as well. And of course, definitely when we carry out some infrastructure development, we build the highway, we build the dam. So this also will basically become a common threat to bird or avian diversity. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Some weeks back, we actually had Dr. Istajib Mohd as our guest, and he spoke about HIMA, or protected area for wildlife. So, in your opinion, what are the roles that conservation efforts and protected areas play in preserving avian diversity?
Yeah, it is very, very good question, and I think a very good action taken by not only government but also in NGOs and other parties that involved in conservation. So as we mentioned earlier, birds need proper habitat. They need suitable habitat. Our first question is about how birds select their habitat in order for them to survive. So if we talk about forest bird, they can survive in forest areas. So you have to protect the forest area. If you like to protect the forest bird, you cannot have other habitat, and then you like to introduce forest bird into that habitat because they cannot survive. The big challenge will be then what kind of species that are you interested in. Let's take example, if you like to conserve hornbill, So in Sarawak, this is basically important bird. So you need the hornbill need about 400 hectare of area for the foraging area. So it means that it's not only that you protect the forest, but you have to make sure that the size is up to that level. But the good thing is when you protect the forest, you protect the habitat. You're protecting the habitat. When you're protecting the habitat, you're not only protecting the bird, but you're also protecting other wildlife, other animal, or even other plant in that area. As I mentioned earlier, that when we talk about ecosystem, this is basically various factors that interlink when they work. So you cannot just protect the forest, but you must have what quality of the forest that you're protecting, and then you are not allowed only bird, but also other species as well. So basically, that is in terms of protecting the habitat. This is very good effort, and we can see that there is quite a good effort done by many parties that involved in protection of habitat. In bird, we have one term we call it important bird area, IBA. So throughout Malaysia, we have 55 important bird area. So this is basically protecting habitat to preserve bird, to conserve bird in that area, because the area basically have many bird in that area. So you protect that habitat. But as I mentioned earlier, that you are not only protecting that area for bird, but indirectly you also protect other species as well. So this is actually quite good in the sense of protecting the area, the forest. Yeah.
Prof, I'd like to go back to what you mentioned about ecotourism. Perhaps you'd like to elaborate on that?
Yeah. The ecotourism basically is this is a quite good and important aspect in the sense that you like to generate economy, at the same time you like to conserve your nature. So, but in order for us to make sure that ecotourism success, you have to involve local people, because you cannot protect certain area, local area, without involving the people in that area. First, you have to educate them. You have to make sure that they realize that they have good resources in their area, and then how they can make money out of that. So we talk about illegal trade. We talk about poaching just now. So what happened is at early stage, people keep thinking that I can catch this bird, I can sell it, I can make money. So now you have to reverse that idea. Now you have to keep that bird. You have to conserve that bird. You cannot catch that bird anymore. So the local people will say that, okay, in that case, how can I make money? How can I make living without catching the bird? So now you have to educate them. Okay, now we protect the area. We protect the bird. You can use the bird as a showcase to other people. So other people will come, observe the bird, watch the bird, and at the same time hire these people, for example, as a tourist guide, or maybe they have other activity like when they would like to enter the area, they have to pay some fees or forever. So this is basically how we have to make sure that ecotourism work. It is very successful in Western countries, up to the case whereby that some private company, they allocate some area just to make sure that the diversity of animal that area, and then they will allow it's not only ecotourism but also to some degree sport hunting. So these people basically they pay, because if you like to watch bird, you don't mind paying. Same thing like these people, of course, maybe in terms of ethical, we think that's not good. You are basically use hunt animal as a sport activity. But these people basically they have some procedure they need to follow. How many bird, how many animal they can kill during that season, and they basically pay quite handsome amount of money in order for that area to be remain as it is, because if that they cannot do their sport hunting anymore in that next field. So this is part of ecotourism. Of course, in Malaysia we don't have that yet, but what I'm trying to say that we have the biodiversity. If we can conserve the biodiversity, we can use the biodiversity to generate ecotourism. At the same time, we can generate more money for local people and basically boost economy at other level as well. Yeah.
I think what you mentioned is basically another dimension of the relationship between man and nature.
Yes.
Because usually when we talk about man and nature, man is part of nature, but at the same time, nature can also be a source of income for the local population. Yeah. Prof, you mentioned earlier about climate change as a threat. So how does climate change actually affect avian diversity and their distribution patterns?
Yeah, this is basically quite. We can avoid this. We can minimize the effect of climate change, but it need effort from all parties, not only from government but from people as well. And to make things more challenging is because the climate change is not only affect one country. So which means that if one country support the action to reduce the effect of climate change, but the neighboring country do not that, so basic that defeat the purpose. So the effect of climate change on bird or in other animal, so it is basically we have to understand that when climate change occur, it will mostly affect in changes in the temperature. Normally it will increase in temperature, but there is only one factor. Another factor will be affected is the rainfall or precipitation, and also the wind pattern. So for bird, when the climate change take place, so when the temperature varies from one place to another, bird that prefer that set of temperature will have to move to other side because the habitat is no more conducive for them. It's not suitable for them anymore. So they will basically move to other habitat. We have good example. For example, we always go to Fraser Hill. Fraser Hill basically is the best place to do bird watching because the bird is not being disturbed by people. So you go to the Fraser Hill, you can see nice, beautiful mountainous bird basically just along the road. So you can just do bird watching from your car. So they are very, very tame, so it's quite easy but there are some record indicate that the bird basically moving to higher altitude, higher elevation due to climate change, because when climate change take place, so you can see the temperature is getting warmer. So therefore the bird that basically reside at lower level now have to move slightly up few meters or maybe 100 meters above than their normal habitat, because the previous habitat is getting warmer and warm. So that is in local context, because we are a tropical country, so maybe in terms of changes of temperature is not so obvious for us. But for a bird that living in temperate country, so when climate change take place, so it will affect the season, will affect temperature. Bird when they migrate, they know that their habitat will experience winter soon. So just imagine that when climate change take place, so the temperature become higher, so basically they will delay their migration process because they think that they don't have calendar, they don't have the time to see. So they think that it's still okay for them to reside in their original habitat. But actually, they is already close to winter season. So that will delay the winter. And when they migrate to their other area, there are also the migration route may be affected by climate change as well. We discussed earlier that when climate change will basically involve the change in temperature, wind pattern, and also rainfall. So this will affect some of their habitat along their step over side along the migration route may be affected. So the bird basically when they migrate, so now they have problem because they have to stop over in some place to refueling. But if the habitat is already being disturbed by climate change or other factors, so they are in the big trouble now. So that is basically in terms of temperature. But we also can see that when wind pattern change, when rainfall change, it also will affect the quality of the habitat. Sometimes it will, due to climate change, will cause that there are more strong wind that basically will damage the habitat. The changes in water level, in sea level or in water level. So that also basically encroach habitat of bird, especially the bird that are occupy habitat in beach area, in shore bird. So that basically will directly affect the bird. It's more on their distribution, shift of distribution, either their habitat or habitat, their migration time or migration route, and then the habitat that they use if affected by climate change.
Okay, Prof. Very briefly, our discussion has been very interesting. We actually come towards the end of the program. Very briefly, Prof, how would you like to conclude our discussion? Perhaps a message to our listeners regarding the importance of birds in the ecosystem.
Yeah, we as a Khalifa, so we have to manage our ecosystem, because it is not only for the place that we have is not only for us as human, but also for other life form as well. So we have to better manage the area. We need other life form in order for us to survive. There are some people ask me that, can you imagine that one day if we wake up and then you cannot see any more forest surrounding you, so what you do? And my direct answer is, if there is no forest around you, you also won't be there. So basically, as a human, we need other organisms to survive. We have to maintain our environment. We have to look after other, because we are the leader, we are the Khalifah, so we have to basically take that role to ensure that the environment we maintain, not only for our survival, but for other life form survival as well.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Nicely put. I think that beautifully wraps up our discussion on birds of a feather exploring avian diversity. Again, thank you, Prof. Rosli, for sharing your insights. I believe we have learned a lot from today's discussion. I wish we have more time, but unfortunately we don't. Ladies and gentlemen, the word bird, or in Arabic at-tayr, is mentioned in the Quran 5 times, while the plural form birds or tuyur is mentioned in the Quran 13 times. And among the birds that is mentioned in the Quran is the hoopoe or hudhud in Arabic, and this is specifically mentioned twice in Surah An-Naml in relations to the Prophet to the story of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. By observing birds, mankind has benefited in terms of developing many fields of knowledge, including ornithology, aerodynamics, and also aviation. And for me, this is very much in line with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, specifically in verse 79 of Surah An-Nahl, which Allah says to the effect that, do they not look at the birds held poised in the midst of the air and the sky? Nothing holds them up but the power of Allah. Verily, in this are signs for those who believe. I think for us as mu'min, we have to look at this as one of the signs of the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just by looking at birds. We have come to the end of our program for today. I would like to record my sincerest gratitude to Professor Dr. Rosli bin Ramli for gracing Man and Nature today. Thank you, Prof. I hope that we'll have other opportunities to again discuss other topics on the air, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully our discussion today has been informative and beneficial to all who are listening. For the last 30 minutes, you have been listening to Man and Nature. I'm Shaykh Muhammad Saifuddeen with Shaykh Muhammad Salleh, signing off until next week. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.